Good evening, everyone. This is Dr. Rajeshwari.
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you. Honorable Director, Professor Dr. Rose Verghese, Shri Thiruvengadam, Professor Dr. V. Shyam Kishore, my colleagues and dear students, a very good evening. At the outset, I would like to welcome you all to this intra-GF awareness program on mediation, the best option for conflict resolution, which is being organized jointly by Bangalore International Mediation, Arbitration and Conciliation Center, BIMAC, and Ramaya College of Law. We also have students who have been invited from various disciplines of management studies, dentistry, medicine, and the law who are attending today's program. Ramaya College of Law has recently established the Center for Legal Aid and ADR Studies, and we are flagging off this center's program, which today's awareness program, which we are undertaken with BIMAC. We are also in the process of signing a memorandum of understanding with BIMAC, and we intend to take this forward with a 7-day intensive mediation training program in the forthcoming days. Through these programs, we intend to orient these students from various disciplines about methods and practices to resolve disputes before and after they approach any courts of law. Such methods will be extremely useful for the students on a personal and professional front to address certain types of challenges which are civil in nature. In fact, mediation has immense potential to reform the civil dispute resolution system and has actually been gaining traction in several countries due to its excellent track record of increasing party satisfaction and decreasing costs. The goal of mediation process is to arrive at a dynamic, mutually acceptable solution to both the parties involved, keeping in mind their interests, which our resource person will be addressing in detail. Our resource person for the day is Mr. Thiruvengadam BC. He's an advocate, an international arbitrator, and a mediator. He has more than 30 years of experience in corporate, commercial, and IP law. He's a senior partner of Thiru and Thiru, a legal 500 firm which strives for legal reforms in India. He's also the honorable director of the Bangalore International Mediation, Arbitration, and Conciliation Center, which is one of India's premier comprehensive institutional ADR centers. I would like to welcome him, and I also request him to take these discussions forward. Over to you, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mrs. Rajeshwari. Thank you, Dr. Rose Verghese and MS Ramaya Law and the Center for Legal Aid and ADR program. It's my pleasure and honor to share my experience with all of you today. I bring in about 15 years of experience as a mediator and almost about 40 years of a litigator as such. And I'll try to make this program very, very interesting. And it's not going to be a mere dialogue. It's going to be packed with a lot of slides, videos, and so a little, and then there's going to be a role play also that we are looking at. So I'm sure you'll enjoy this experience, and please feel free to share your views. Later on, you can always send a message back, feedback to the law school, Dr. Verghese, or even write to us. Okay. So with that, let me start. This is going to be entirely a PowerPoint presentation, so I don't think that you need to see me and get bored of me on my face. So let us start with ever since the evolution of the earth and the species. The world has become a place only for the survival of the fittest, be it any species, and the Homo sapiens, the humankind, is not an exception as such. From the Stone Age, the method of resolution of dispute was, again, as I said, survival of the fittest. Might is right. This continued. Oh, sorry, I need to keep admitting people a little now and then. Okay. Yeah. Could someone manage in admitting people in using some of the system, because it interrupts my, okay. Yeah. So from the Stone Age, as civilization advanced, people decided not to wage a fight with each other, but they became smart and started hiring gladiators in Rome, where someone else fought the cause of someone else. Just like we lawyers fight in the court for the cause of our clients, gladiators fought a game, and it was the winner means would justify the action of his boss or the person who had engaged. Around the 12th century AD, the system of trial by combat had taken deep root in the European system, in the sense, if I have a dispute with someone else, maybe a land dispute, and I don't go to the court, but I have to prove that I'm right. So what do? I engage a person to fight for my cause. It's something similar to the gladiators. So two people will fight, and the winner is supposed to win the case as such. So there was no system of any witnesses recording evidences or confession of the sort. So trial by combat was one of the very, very popular method of justice dispensation those days. Later on, in countries like India and almost various parts of the world, a system called panchayat in India was there, and in other countries, this concept of guilds developed. In panchayat, all of you should know that the real meaning of panchayat, 5 elderly members of a village or a community or a trade would decide by way of majority who's right or who's wrong, and when a dispute is brought to them. It's an adjudicatory process. It is not something like mediation. Very often I come to know that when people say that, oh, mediation is nothing but panchayat of those days, it is not so as such. So panchayat system is an adversarial process altogether. Okay, but I'll draw the difference between panchayat and mediation at a later stage. Then the Britishers brought the judicial system, which is again an adversarial process. But the fact remains, we human beings are caught in web of conflicts. There are plenty of conflicts in our lives. There's no end for these conflicts. We lawyers survive out of conflicts. It is a bread and butter. But what about doctors? I understand there are medical students and doctors watching this program. Doctors do have conflicts too. They have issues when they run a hospital and establishment. There are conflicts between with the patients, with the relatives of the patients, then with the vendors, and so on and so forth. How do they resolve them? There are several hospitals and doctors who consult us, and we have done mediation also for them. And it is not as if a doctor's life is conflict free. Okay. Likewise, engineers. Every engineer, any professional engineer has conflicts with the customers, with the vendors, and so on and so forth. Let it be any realm of engineering, be it IT, be it civil engineering, or mechanical, or electrical, or electronics. No one leads a conflict free life as such. There are managers. It's not easy to run an establishment. As a manager, you have to manage people. Manager is what? Man management, basically. And as I said, human beings are filled with a lot of conflicts. And to resolve the conflicts, it's a challenging job. And a manager's job is not that easy. And it's a very enviable post. And he has to manage and bring a balance to run the organization, to make its production activity, sales, meet the targets, at the same time, keep everyone happy as such. Then we have these, coming to the home front, we have a lot of disputes within a family. There's a matrimonial conflict which happens. And many a time these conflicts die on its own over a period of time. On a day, a husband and wife may quarrel. That's a conflict, of course, but they tend to get resolved, and most of the time these conflicts are buried. But at times it becomes worse as such. Then we have conflict with the neighbors too. There may be issues with my neighbor. He may throw garbage into my place, or the dogs keep barking overnight, and there may be a construction activity or renovation activity that bothers one. So there are issues which we have to put up with sometimes, and sometimes you're not able to put up, and there are conflicts which arises as such. So friends, this world is not conflict free, and it will never be free. Conflicts always coexist with humankind, and sometimes it's for good because it brings in the best, the quality of a human being. But people should know how to handle conflict as such. If they don't handle it in a proper way, it can be a disaster. It has resulted in wars.
I believe in America. America has made my fortune, and I raised my daughter in the American fashion. I gave her freedom, but I taught her never to dishonor her family. She found a boyfriend, and an Italian. She went to the movies with him. She stayed out late. I didn't protest. 2 months ago, he took her for a drive with another boyfriend. They made her drink whiskey, and then they tried to take advantage of her. She resisted. She kept her honor. So they beat her like an animal. When I went to the hospital, her nose was broken. Her jaw was shattered, held together by wire. She couldn't even weep because of the pain. But I wept. Why did I weep? She was the light of my life. Beautiful girl. Now she will never be beautiful again. Sorry. I went to the police like a good American. These two boys were brought to trial. The judge sentenced them to 3 years in prison and suspended the sentence. Suspended the sentence? They went free that very day. I stood in the courtroom like a fool. And those two bastards, they smiled at me. Then I said to my wife, for justice, we must go to Don Corleone.
Why didn't you go to the police? Why didn't you come to me first?
What do you want of me? Tell me anything, but do what I beg you to do.
What is that?
This is the opening scene of the famous movie Godfather. These movies of the 70s conveyed a message that if people do not get justice, if the justice is not fair in one's opinion, or if the justice is delayed, then people will seek alternative methods to get justice and so also resolve disputes. On the screen, my friends, you see there are two cover pages of two famous magazines. One is a magazine which was very, very popular about 2-3 decades ago. It was the magazine called Life, which is no longer alive now. It's the magazine is shut. And the Time, which still continues. Life cover page says the city's lockup are virtually school for prisons, a school for crimes. There are hardcore criminals in the prisons. They nurture young prisoners who are maybe first-time offenders to turn into a very hardcore criminal. Now, if you going by the sequence in the Godfather scene, Don Corleone, the mafia king, asks him, "Why did you go to the police? Why did you not come to me?" This is when the person says, "Listen, though there was a conviction, the two boys who molested my daughter were found guilty, but their sentences were suspended." Friends, there's a link between the story there and these two magazines that you see. Sentences were suspended because it was the duty of the Justice Department, which is controlling the prisons, that when the prison is full, not one more person can be added. The capacity, if it's 100 prisoners, 101, there's no scope for having one more prisoner there. So the judiciary felt that even though they may be criminals, but they need to live with dignity as such. So it put pressure on the government and the system to establish more prisons in more space as such. That apart, the fact of the matter is that the crime rate started increasing substantially in the 60s and 70s, and which resulted in the famous jurist Roscoe Pound. Roscoe Pound had introduced the concept of structured mediation in 1906 when he addressed the American Bar Association. But it took about 70 years for the United States to adopt the structured mediation as an alternative dispute resolution option as such. It recognized, and slowly and gradually, mediation was introduced as an ADR option. From 1970s, almost now 50 years, America has gone far ahead as far as mediation is concerned, or any sort of alternate dispute resolution mechanism are concerned. In India, mediation is a fairly new concept. It's hardly about 15 years old. But friends, the situation isn't different.
ಈ ನಕಲಿಗಳಿಂದ ಬುಲೆಟ್ ಹಾರಿಸಿದ್ರೆ ನಿಮ್ ಬ್ರೈನ್ ಸಕ್ಕತ್ ಡ್ಯಾಮೇಜ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ನೀವೆಲ್ಲ ಯಾರು? ನೀವೆಲ್ಲ ಯಾರು? ನಾವೆಲ್ಲ ಸೋಷಿಯಲ್ ವರ್ಕರ್, ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಹಣ ವಸೂಲಿ ಮಾಡೋ. ಇವನ ಹತ್ರ 2 ಲಕ್ಷ ರೂಪಾಯಿ ತಗೊಂಡಿಲ್ಲ, ಅದನ್ನ ಅವನು ಕೊಟ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ನೀನ್ ಕಳ್ಸೋ. ಮಾಣಿಕ್ಲಾಲ್, ನೀವು ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು ಸರಿಯಲ್ಲ. ನೀವ್ ಹೇಳಿದ ಪ್ರಕಾರ ನಿಮ್ ಹಣ ನಿಮ್.
Okay, that is a scene from the Kannada version of Munaba MBBS. It's a reality. And what you see is a visiting card of a debt recovery agent in India. A debt recovery agent is a very dignified name for a person who recovers the money for any finance company or any person who has lent the money as such. So they may not use the word mafia as such, but they may use in a different way. A recovery agent, and I'm not saying all recovery agents are like that, but there are some elements which have gone into, penetrated into the system, and the courts have time and again taken cognizance of it and deprecated such a conduct. But the reality is there is an alternative mechanism which is not that legal, and I'm going to share some information with you people. A 2007 survey conducted in 4 major states revealed that 53% of the disputants in India do not want to litigate, do not want to contest, do not want a resolution. They simply give up. They may be for various reasons. We'll talk about it later. Only 9% of disputants come to lawyers and go to courts. About 29% of the disputants do not go to courts or lawyers, but they'd like to go and approach a local leader or a priest or a Swamiji or someone in the area who can wield some influence to bring about a settlement. It can be even a family person in the name of what's so-called panchayat as such. But significantly, another 9% of the disputants go to the mafia. And the survey revealed that about 17% in big metropolitan cities go to mafia to recover a debt, or if when someone has to throw out a tenant, they take the help of mafia. So for whatever the reason is. And if you compare the percentage of people who come to lawyers and courts and percent of people go to mafia, it's shockingly more or less similar, 9%. So what is the reason? Just think, only 9% of the population go to lawyers and courts. What about 91%? Friends, it's not docket explosion as people have been talking. It is docket exclusion. You have excluded 91% of the population totally out of the system. Let us see why people do not come to courts and lawyers. 11% of the population feel that going to courts is against the family custom or a social stigma or family stigma. There may be a girl who may be harassed, brutally beaten by her husband, but still she doesn't want a divorce because she doesn't want to be stigmatized as a divorcee. 26% of these people do not want to go to the courts because they consider it is very expensive. Imagine if there's an auto rickshaw driver who has to recover 5,000 rupees from a person. What will he do? Can he afford to go and spend money on a lawyer and file a litigation and go up and down, give up his driving the auto rickshaw for some time and go and spend his time in the courts, meeting lawyers? So they think that's not worth spending money. They call it as good money chasing bad money. 37% talk about delay and time consuming going to the courts. 14% say that the outcome in a court litigation is uncertain. And 12% in the survey, they do not want to give any reason as such. Now, when we talk about 9% of the disputants coming to the courts, we still have a huge backlog. As on 1st of January 2021, approximately about 65,000 cases were pending in the Supreme Court. It has gone up slightly by at least by from 55,000 to 65,000, basically on account of this COVID lockdown. And about 330 million cases are pending in various high courts and lower courts in the country. But let us be fair to our judges in this country. They are doing a humongous job, and nowhere in the world, having traveled all around the world, I have not come across any country, any judges doing the amount of the work which a judge in India does. Number of judges per 10 million population in USA is about 135. It should be, read as 1 million population. We have only 17 judges. Average cases handled per day by a judge in the USA is about 0.3 case per day. That is not even one case per day. And whereas in India, on board every day, a judge has about average 220 cases. Number of cases disposed per annum by a judge in USA is about 80 cases, and there are about 400 cases that are being disposed per year by a particular judge, by an average judge. But what is very interesting is 90% of the disputes are referred for mediation by the courts. Unfortunately, we do not have the exact statistics because efforts are being made by National Legal Service Authority to collate this information, but it's not a very significant percent, maybe hardly 3 or 4%, I should say. Now, what are the reasons for the backlog? Litigation is on the rise, with litigation directly proportionate to the population, and the new legislation that's been coming up, and the ratio of judges to population is very low. Budgetary allocation for the judiciary is pretty poor, and again, reluctance of good lawyers to join the judiciary and lack of domain experts, so on. There are many reasons as such. But all said and done, the judiciary is doing an excellent job in this country. It could be better, definitely, but within the limited resources and limitation, they have been doing a wonderful job, especially during this COVID time. India was one of the first countries to adopt online justice dispensation very effectively. I'm sure for a third world country, it's really commendable, and there are a lot of scope to improve. So all of you know that the dispute resolution mechanisms, various dispute resolution, especially the law students, but for the benefit of the non-law students and non-lawyers here, everyone knows about going to the courts, filing a suit or a petition, complaints, appeals, revisions, etc. But many may not be aware of what are the alternative dispute resolution mechanisms. Negotiation starts with simple negotiation between two parties. Then there's conciliation, then mediation, arbitration, then judicial settlement. I'll be discussing very briefly on all these. And there is what is called a Lok Adalat, then neutral evaluation and collaborative settlements. There are various hybrid systems like MEDARB, ARB-MED, MEDARB, and all that. So I'm not going to go into detail about all this. I would like to have a role play at this stage. The story goes that an old man, a person dies, leaving a will. And in that will, he distributes between his children all the properties equally, except for a family portrait. It's a family portrait, maybe a fairly antique one, but he wants this to go only to his favorite child. But for some reason, strange reason, he does not mention who is his favorite child. Okay. May I request, I want 3 volunteers here. Let me choose someone from the faculty of MS Ramaya Law, maybe Dr. Rajeshri and Dr. Anita Patel.
Yes, sir. Yes, yes.
Yeah. And I need one more person as a volunteer.
Sanjay, could you just step in, please? Sanjay?
Sure, ma'am.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Now, please look at this rule very clearly. The old man leaves a will wherein all the properties are to be divided equally between his 2 children, except for the family portrait, which is go to the favorite child. The children fight over the portrait and go to the court. One of you is going to be the judge here. Okay. And as a judge, you're going to listen to both the parties. And as a judge, you're not going to tell any of the parties to compromise. Your job is to deliver a judgment. You have to deliver a judgment and decide who is the favorite child. Once you decide who is the favorite child, then the portrait goes to the person. So I'm going to stop sharing of the screen. And can I have the 3 participants?
Yes.
Yeah. So decide who one of you should be the judge. Who will be the judge and who will be the siblings?
Okay, since I'm coordinating, I would be the judge.
Very good, wonderful. Yeah. Then Dr. Anita?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I would
And
first give,
yeah. Yeah, who's the
Sanjay?
other person?
I'm okay with anything,
Sanjay?
sir. It's fine.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
You need to switch on your video.
So just give me a second, sir. I'll just change my connection so that it'll be much more stable when I switch on my video. That's not a problem.
While Sanjay is connecting, I should tell that this program is also being shown live on YouTube as such, by Max YouTube, and it can be viewed any number of times. And there are several other recorded programs.
Yes, I think Sanjay, could you begin? Anita ma, could you begin?
Yes.
Now,
So yeah,
you
yeah,
have to
Sanjay.
decide who is the judge.
You can go ahead.
Dr.
I'll
Rajeshri.
follow.
Yes, I would like to listen to the daughter first.
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
give 5 minutes for both the parties to speak, and 5 minutes to. I think we still have a time because this same role play is going to be repeated later.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So,
Or 3 minutes for each.
all right, all right. So ladies first. So we begin with the lady here. So I'd like to listen to what Ms. Anita Patil has to say with regard to the family portrait.
Okay. So to tell about the family portrait which has been preserved by my father, and as I'm the first and the only daughter, and I think he's the one who mainly loved me the most, and I'm the one who is entitled for this as a first child, and also the responsibilities which I have taken as a daughter. I think the portrait has to be mainly I'm entitled for that portrait, which is not only related to something which the family belongs, but there's a lot of emotional connectivity for the portrait. So I would mainly ask my siblings to mainly live at the portrait to me, and I am the one who is mainly entitled, because there's not only the portrait which is which is not only having any other connection, but it's a lot of emotional connectivity towards my father. So I think the portrait actually belongs to me, and I'm the one who mainly had invested with my father for coming up with this such a antique portrait, which was mainly done to capture all the memories with my father. So I would ask my brother Suresh to please leave the portrait to me, and I cannot, give that to any of my other siblings. So Sanjay, if you could mainly give the portrait to me.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Anita Patil. Yes, Mr. Sanjay Suresh, what do you have to say?
Firstly, I would like to state that the portrait is far more significant than being portrayed by what Dr. Anita Patel has to state. Its very essence in itself is that it reminds us every other time, regardless of our differences in the family, we are always going to be together, regardless of what the situation is. And this is a reminder of why we stick together as a family. It has a greater significance than what is just being portrayed, saying that I have done so and so to the family, I've provided to the family, I have been with my father for so and so years. That's not the very significance of what the portrait stands for. She, not knowing the very essence of why the portrait is there, is great enough for me to just just state that she's not worth having that portrait, because I know the very essence of it, and I've spent time with my father, and he has told me the very essence of it, and I have figured it out partly by myself as well. And it is more of a treasure trove to us as a family rather than just a piece of art. So on these grounds, I would request you to
So,
see
Suresh,
the
in case if you're
portrait.
saying that if it is not conveyed or it is not through the portrait, then you can leave it. When I'm saying that it is mainly connecting me with emotionally to the portrait, the memories which I've captured in the portrait,
Miss Anita,
that is the reason.
Miss Anita, we understand your emotions. I think you can only give your arguments at the moment. So we will look into it to decide to whom the portrait should essentially go to.
Okay. Do you have a judgment?
Yes. Considering the fact that both of them are actually, in fact, emotionally attached to it, I think there's one thing which basically sets apart the fact that Ms. Anita Patil is the first and the only daughter, and considering the fact that she has shouldered a lot of responsibilities, and also considering the fact that looking at the will, a majority of it has already been willed property-wise, immovable property has been willed to Mr. Suresh. I
No,
choose.
no. It be divided equally.
Sorry. So I
It's
think
been divided equally, ma'am, according to the problem.
so I considering the fact that it is a family portrait which cannot be essentially divided as such between both of them, I think the family portrait should go to Miss Anita Patil.
Okay. Dr. Anit Patil, you must be very happy.
Yes, sir, definitely.
Mr. Sanjay, are you happy with this verdict?
Absolutely not, sir. I'd like to challenge this order and move for an appeal in the higher court.
Okay. So
Or I would more than be willing to set out of court and have a
no, we are
mediation
not talking about
process
set
if
of court.
necessary.
I'm asking you simple.
Yeah.
Now, the next question to you, Mr. Sanjay.
Yes, sir.
What happened in the court? Whatever brief thing. Did it hurt your feelings?
It most certainly it did, sir, to an extent at least, because I was looking forward to getting that portrait, whereas that very notion of that just died out when judge said, "No, I'm sorry, this is not going to come to you. It's going to go to the daughter instead." So of course,
The third is,
get hurt.
will it have an impact on your future relationship with your sister? Is it going to be normal as such, or there will be a slight dent in it?
There will be a dent in it for sure, but not very bitter.
Okay.
At least for that moment or a few days or a few weeks, probably, yes.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And big hand to you all. Okay, it's wonderfully done, very crisp and very precise.
Thank
And
you,
I'm
sir.
going to share the screen again, go back. Oh, kindly hold on for a minute. To reclaim host. Make host. Which one are you? Okay, sorry for this delay because there was a technical glitch in transferring as a host. So, as Mr. Sanjay said, if he's unhappy, what's he going to do? He's going to prefer an appeal, challenge it. And when it comes to litigation as such, the dispute does not get resolved easily. Okay, you may get a verdict in one's favor in a lower court, then one prefers an appeal, and it keeps going from one court to another as such. So what happens is that you should understand, you may get a favorable order in one court, but you'll be surprised if the order's judgment is reversed and goes against you in the appellate court. And this can happen. There can be a concurrent verdict, we call, or a divergent finding. And this can go up to the Supreme Court in India or whichever the country is as such. It never ends that easily. So I need to impress upon you why mediation is the most favorite and best option for conflict resolution. I have not used the word dispute resolution. I've used word conflict resolution. And there's an immense difference between conflict and dispute. Okay. On the screen, you see two children fighting over a gift, which a mischievous uncle like me maybe would have come and given one box, a gift, knowing fully well there are two children, and they fight over this gift, and it drives the father, the parent, mad because they're screaming. So what are the options available to this father? What he can do is, he can lock the gift, take away. He said, listen, you guys are screaming and creating a lot of noise. I'm locking and putting it in the lock and key. Okay. The second option is to give the gift to the eldest son. The third option is to give it to the younger son. Now let us do an option analysis. Locking away the gift, you're making both the kids unhappy. Giving it to the eldest son makes the younger son unhappy, and give it to the younger son makes the elder son unhappy. This what happens, my dear friends, in a dispute when it comes to litigation or arbitration as such. Dispute is something that you are trying to resolve, and it is momentary. But imagine when both the kids are, when option one, when both the kids are unhappy, they will blame each other for father taking away the gift and locking it. If you give it to one son, the other child is going to get very unhappy, and there's going to be bitterness between both the children as such. This bitterness gives room for the conflict as such. So in any dispute resolution mechanism as such, if especially in an adversarial dispute mechanism process, the system addresses only the dispute and one does not address the conflict as such. How do you resolve the conflict? if you are able to teach the children to share the toy and play with it, whatever the mechanism, way they can share and be happy about it, you're going to eliminate the conflict aspect of it, remove the conflict from the mind of the children, and teach them how to live together and coexist. So, fourth option, as I said, is not a temporary relief, but trying to bring in a permanent solution so that once the children learn how to share the toy and play together and enjoy working together, whatever it is, the parents are not going to have this problem of dispute, no headache, nothing as such. They'll be very happy and confident the children can manage themselves. Now, conflicts bring disharmony, it endangers peace, and conflicts manifest into disputes. Okay. Now, can we have the same team for the role play? The same role play. Now, Dr. Rajeshri, you're going to be the mediator here.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. I'm not sure whether you've undergone training as a mediator at any point of time.
But I've taught ADR, and then I have trained a lot of students for mediation competitions.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, then perhaps I'm sure you'll do a very good job as a mediator now. Now, there are few rules. One is you're not, as a mediator, you're not going to give them options as to how to resolve. You're not going to give us any judgment as you did as a judge in the previous role play, but you're going to help the parties to resolve the dispute. You're not going to tell who is good, who is bad. You're not going to tell who is right, who is wrong. Okay. You're not going to tell who is a favorite child. Okay.
Right.
But you're going to play and ensure that function as a facilitator and try to bring out, help them to resolve the dispute. Now I'm giving you 5 minutes to both the parties.
Okay. So very good evening.
Yeah, 1 minute. What you can do is you can have a private dialogue straight away.
Okay.
Because you already heard this, now you can move into a private session with each individually with both of them, Dr. Anita and Mr. Sanjay as such.
All right. So considering I've heard both of the parties, so I would like to have a private caucus session with Ms. Anita. Yes, Ms. Anita, could we just understand what you wish to say with regard to whatever we have discussed in the previous session jointly that we conducted with Mr. Sanjay Suresh?
Yes, Miss Mediator. I would like to mainly say that as I've been already told that it's not only just a poetry which is mainly has any of the monetary value, but as I'm saying that it is mainly connected emotionally, where I have been telling that I'm the first daughter who has been loved by my family, especially my father who has written the will, and also have taken the majority of the responsibility, where my younger son has not taken anything. But I'm not blaming for anything of that, but I mainly want to say that this is the only memory which I have mainly preserved as a treasury for my deceased father. So as you have already been conveyed that it is a lot of emotional attachment towards the poetry, as well as a lot of memories are attached towards that poetry which I have captured in that poetry. So please try to understand that I have nothing against my younger brother as such, but it's all about the only poetry which I'm asking. And as you have been already aware that my deceased or the late father has mainly given all the property equally to all the my both the his daughter and son. There's no point of dispute or the regarding property, but I'm only asking this because I'm the elder daughter, where I have been loved so much. I have done so much for the family as a elder daughter, and at least I'm asking my younger brother just to give this as a a token of my memories, which I can mainly put it with me forever, with me. So that is my only point of argument, or you can say with my younger brother. And if you could mainly help us with resolving this uh, I can say a conflict, which is later coming into a dispute, which is mainly figuring out to be a bigger dispute. And as you have already heard my younger brother saying that in case if if he doesn't get, so he may go for a adversarial method. So we have mainly approached you for as a mediator, and I hope we get some solution by at least sitting on a table together to coming up with some solution where we both can be happily departing after both of us getting married. So I think this is the only conflict between me us siblings. So this is just from my end I wanted to say in my caucus session.
All right, Ms. Anita, thank you so much. I think there is some kind of a willingness on your part to resolve this dispute between your brother. But how has your relationship with your brother been all these years?
I think we don't have any issues financially, because as everything is settled, as I am also quite independent, I have taken, as I said, I have taken the responsibility since beginning, and I am also an independent woman as such. I am married, so I don't think so there's anything which is dispute between me and my brother, younger brother is concerned. But I don't know why exactly the problem with regard to portrait has come. So we have mainly approached for the mediation, where we want to amicably settle in case everything comes. And mainly because of this, we are not speaking towards each other for almost 6 to 1 year. So if this gets resolved, I think we would be mainly amicably settling for a portrait. That's it from my end.
All right. So there's a lot of willingness on your part to talk to your brother. Thank you, Ms. Anita. Is there something else which you would want me to, talk to your brother when I hold a private session with him? Is there anything that you wish for me to communicate with him, or you wish that you don't want me to communicate with him?
I don't want to say that you don't have to convey anything, but I want to mainly the reason for coming for this mediation is because I have known about this concept, right? That it's mainly where especially when it comes to family matters, obviously everyone emotionally attached. So when I'm coming it voluntarily to the mediation, it means that I want to get it settled with my brother, and I don't want to continue this conflict throughout the life. So that is the reason, ma'am, Miss Mediator, I have come to mediation to mainly with the voluntariness that I want to get it settled. But if you could facilitate between us and make sure the relation between both the siblings are maintained, then I would be really glad to come for the mediation.
All right, Ms. Anita, this has been duly noted. We'll also have to see what your brother has to say in this regard. Thank you so much. Yes, Mr. Sanjay, what do you have to say? I've heard your sister in the other conversation, private session that I've had with her. Could we listen to what you have to say?
Madam Mediator, as I stated previously as well, saying that the very significance of this portrait, it might just seem that I'm harping on the same thing again and again, but the very fact is that the significance of the portrait is that we stabilize as a family at the end of the day, regardless of our indifferences that happen throughout our lives, right? So the very essence of that portrait is as such. So I said, regardless of our responsibilities being inherently given to us or we ourselves taking them up, is not going to factor into the very emotion as to why this portrait is very essential to me as a son who's residing in the same house as my father. Because at the end of the day, regardless of which geographical area you are in, I strongly believe that this portrait does necessarily belong in this household and it should remain here as a whole. And my sister's very contention is that there seems to be some.
Yeah. Yes, Sanjay, you can continue.
May I request others to kindly mute?
इस कविता में एक बच्ची छोटी रहकर माँ के साथ रहना अला कविता में ऐसी बड़ी न हूँ मैं क्यों कहा गया है.
Someone is interrupting. I request them to kindly mute your voice.
Anuja ma'am, could you please mute yourself? Anuja ma'am.
Please continue.
Okay.
Yes, Sanjay.
Mediator, as I was stating before, that she's more than welcome to come to this place, have a look at the portrait, have a good time at her house. But under no circumstances am I in a position to let it go out of this premises as a whole, because a lot of sentiments do come into picture, right? Regardless of which sibling we are, the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, it doesn't necessarily matter. As I have stated again and again, saying that this represents a bigger picture, that is, we stay together as a family, regardless of our contributions to the family during when my father was alive or now when he's deceased. His primary motive at the end of the day was us to remain as a family. Like, I just want to convey this soft message to my sister saying that, see, listen, we will always be a family together. As a family, we'll always remain the same. But this portrait is far more significant than what you're just asking for. So I strongly believe that it has to stay in the place where my father lived all his life and eventually died.
All right. Thank you, Sanjay. Ms. Anita and Mr. Sanjay, welcome back to the session. After listening to both of you, I think there's one common understanding which I've come to, that there is a willingness on both the parties to amicably look at resolving this particular dispute. And what I also realized is that this particular painting is of significance to both the parties, because both of you are emotionally attached to this. And I think the very fact that you want to be grounded to the family, and it has a lot of significance emotionally, and there is a lot of willingness on both of the parties. Is there any common way that you could try to reconcile? And what I understand is both Sanjay and Anita share no animosity. Your relationship has also been quite well. You spent considerable number of years with each other together. So now that the both of you are here, I request both of you to kindly discuss and see how we could look at resolving this at the moment. Ma'am, could you unmute yourself, Anita ma'am?
Yes, Miss Mediator. I would just like to add few things, like mainly because, as you rightly said, we both are totally, definitely emotionally attached to that portrait. And one more thing which I would like to add is, and also it is mainly to request, as we have come to the mediation, that itself means that we are, we are mainly accepting the fact that we have come here for mediation and not just to quarrel like any other forums, right? So here I would like to mainly say that when my brother is staying in the same house where he has a lot of memories, right? Since his childhood, he has a lot of memories there. But I have been married for almost 8 years. So I don't get a portrait just to have my memories captured. That's my only thing. I'm just asking the same thing for my brother, that you are staying in the same house. You can see him, you can see the father's memories everywhere throughout the premises of the house. So I'm out of the house, as he's saying, the geographical, I'm not there in the same premises. That's the only reason. And I'm telling you that I have been very much attached to that memories which has been captured in that portrait. So can that not be given to a daughter who has been staying away from the house, or staying away from the family where she has been born and brought up? So that is the only I want to just convey that feeling towards my brother, to mainly give that portrait to me, because as he's been staying here since long, and he has a lot of memories in the same house of our childhood, with the moments which we have spent with our parents, right? So that is the reason I'm mainly looking to that portrait should be given to me.
Mrs. Sanjay, I think there's some point which Ms. Anita has made. What do you think? She says that you already have memories of your late father who's been in the house, in whose house you're currently staying. So she wishes to have the portrait with her. So what do you think? And there's also willingness on her part. How do you think that you could, look at this issue?
Madam Mediator, I'd just like to state my understanding through an analogy, right? The Mona Lisa is in the Louvre. If you take the Mona Lisa from the Louvre and go elsewhere and put it into some other museum, the Louvre loses its value. Similarly, the portrait as well. The portrait is a representation of this house and the family it has. So, regardless of what other memories I have, I feel that this portrait has significant value for it to remain in this house. Okay, I'll just give out options as such, saying that, see, listen, property has been divided equally. I get the house, you get the money, whatever is there in the will. But the portrait has to remain here because I've harped again and again and again that it is a significant part of this family and it should remain in the family house rather than elsewhere. So I strongly believe that we can come to an amicable solution as such, saying that the portrait can be shared to an extent. We can come to terms with it to an extent, I believe. Well, apart from that, I feel that its permanent existence, at least to an extent where I'm still alive, should be at this house itself. And
Okay,
I'm not willing to
wonderful.
let it go anytime soon.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Miss Mediator, I would like to say something here. I, being the elder daughter, elder sister, and if this is the way he's talking in the mediation forum, then I would like to give it to the highlight that as he's saying the property will be taken by him and the money will be given to me, which is not right. And I'm going to take him to the court saying that I think the latest judgment, Vinit Sharma versus Rakesh Sharma, I'm going to take the co-personal rights. I will see how exactly he will take the property.
Miss Anita, I think I request.
If this is the tune he's talking in a mediation forum, then
Ms.
I know
Anita,
I will backwards.
Anita, I request you to kindly calm down. We understand that it is a very emotionally charged session. But you also need to understand here that it's not about cutting the orange into half. We are looking at resolving the interests of both the parties here. So I think I request you to please have some water and kindly, please come to terms. But please also note here that Mr. Sanjay has voluntarily said that he's ready to, give it to you. Not exactly. He says it is definitely going to be in the house. But then there is also some kind of a willingness where he says that he's ready to share that portrait with you. So I request you to kindly look at considering those options which Mr. Suresh has to say. Mr. Suresh, can you kindly
I could
elaborate?
add something if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
I'm willing to go far beyond my way as well to pay for an artist to replicate the portrait and give it to Miss Anita, if that's going to satisfy some level of emotion.
Miss Mediator, I would like to highlight the same fact that
sorry to interrupt.
Mr. Thiruvengadam. Yes,
sorry
sir.
to interrupt. I should congratulate you, Ms. Jayashree, because you did a very good job as such, as a mediator, though you've not been trained. What I observed was you're an extremely keen listener, active listener, and you caught the point of what Mr. Sanjay said of sharing. Okay, yeah, with the proper training, I'm sure it will be. This is a matter which it is an example of a real case as such, which I handled about 15 years ago. Okay, it's something. It's very similar. Now we are not talking about portrait, about some other object as such. Okay, so the basic issue is that in mediation, you're addressing the conflict, not just the dispute. Okay, you did a right thing of trying to tell Dr. Anita Patil, okay, fine, you have a litigation option, but why don't you think about whether you've taken note of the fact Mr. Sanjay mentioned about sharing. This is a keyword. Okay, wonderful. I think we are running out of time. We need to proceed further because there are lots to be shared. Unless, whenever you say that, okay, this is a bit boring, tell me, I'll stop the session as such. Thank you very much. A big hand to you all. Wonderful. So I'm going to resume the presentation as such. Okay. So there are various reasons for conflict, which causes conflict. It may be misunderstanding, misinformation, lack of information, basically is what we fail to understand each other. And we stress a lot on empathizing. A mediator helps the party to empathize each other's position and making the parties to step into the shoes of the other party and realize how would he or she would react to a given situation as such. And there are other reasons like envy, personal traits like pride, arrogance, etc. And then a value-based conflict. There are various reasons for conflicts as such. And one gets trained as to how to handle these situations as a mediator. And there are various advanced level programs also. Okay. I think. Okay. Now, conflict is a small spark which manifests into a dispute. So all disputes that come to court or an arbitration could have been easily resolved at an earlier stage when conflict is identified. And that is the reason there are various mechanisms to address and resolve conflict at an earlier stage by sitting and negotiating. But if one undergoes the training as a mediator, it need not necessarily that one should practice as a mediator, but if one undergoes the training as a mediator, they'll be able to handle their life in a much, much better way. Having trained thousands and thousands, almost about 4,000 mediators in this country and abroad, majority of them at the end of the program, they'll come and tell me, listen, sir, there is a big change in me. My behavior with my rest of the family has totally changed thanks to the mediation training. This is, I'm sure this experience of almost all the mediation trainers, they get this such a feedback. Okay. So what happens in a conflict? The propounder of pragmatism is Dr. William James, is a psychologist. This is what he says: whenever you are in a conflict with someone, there is one factor that can make the difference between damaging a relationship or deepening it. And that factor is attitude. This attitude factor was very well demonstrated in the previous role play, where people became emotionally charged. And Dr. Anita Patel said, listen, if this is going to be the behavior and attitude of my brother, I'm willing to go to the court. Okay. So as things, people take positions as such, it's extremely difficult to come out with a resolution. And that's the reason a mediator plays a very, very important role, which no other dispute resolution mechanism provides, be it a court litigation or arbitration or even lok adalats. So it stands totally in a different footing. So mediation does not merely address the dispute, but focuses in resolving the conflict and restoration of relationship which is already spoiled, or prevents splitting of a relationship as such. As I said, as a mediator, one is not a judge. Mediator is not an arbitrator. As a mediator, we don't counsel people. We are not counselors. We are not psychologists to sit and counsel people as to how they should behave. Mediators does not evaluate and say, oh, you've done something wrong. Oh, I think you're good, but maybe other person is wrong. And we don't even evaluate who's right, who's wrong, whose case is better. Nothing. As I said, we do not judge at all. And most important is that we do not come out. We have options. We know very well, okay, we have in our mind, oh, if I suggest this to the parties, they can easily resolve. Yes, we'll be tempted, but no good mediator will ever give a mediator's proposal. It's taboo. It goes against the ethics of mediation as such. So what do I do? I'm only a facilitator as a mediator. Okay. To function as a mediator, I need to be independent, When I say independent, I'm not attached. I'm not interested in any of the parties directly, except I'll be happy if they are able to resolve the dispute. That means I am not no way connected, have any relationship, be as a friend or a relation or any other business contact with any of the parties, nor with interest in the subject matter. I am neutral and unbiased and impartial. Neutral, unbiased, impartial, independent are not synonymous terms which are being used very often. Each term has tremendous significance and conveys different meaning altogether, and this can be brought in very well in when a person undergoes a mediator training. Let me give a small example. A judge in a court or an arbitrator is expected to be neutral, but at the end of the day, when he has to deliver a judgment, he has to move away from his neutrality because he has to evaluate who's got a better case, what sort of evidence, who's got a better evidence, what sort of proof, then has to decide in someone's favor. So there he steps away from neutrality, otherwise he cannot function as a judge. But being a mediator, one needs to be absolutely neutral, totally. There's no scope at all to take any sides at any point of time. So what are we trained as? We are trained in communication psychology. We are trained in negotiation psychology. We are trained in confidentiality techniques and how to remain neutral. It's a very challenging job. And ultimately, the drafting resolution agreement, which I'll talk about it very briefly at a later stage. Now coming to the main topic. My God, it's taken more than an hour to come to the topic, right? Well, mediation is a process where the parties participate in a mediation voluntarily. Unlike an arbitration, where parties have signed an agreement to resolve the dispute through an arbitration, they are prevented from going to the court. Even if they go to the court will say, listen, you have signed an arbitration agreement, signed that you resolve the agreement, resolve to the dispute through arbitration. You please go there. This is not your place. So it becomes mandatory in arbitration, similarly in conciliation also, but in mediation, it's voluntary. Though there is a case when it comes to court annex mediation that, or in section 12A of the Commercial Courts Act, making mediation somewhat mandatory in the sense the courts will persuade the parties to go for mediation. Yes, that there's no harm in it. But the decision-making process or withdrawing from the mediation is totally voluntary. No one can compel, no courts can compel that, listen, you walked away from this mediation, so you're going to suffer a bad order. No, that's not done at all. The second issue is the entire process is confidential. Whatever discussed in the mediation room between the mediator and the parties is to be treated as confidential. Whatever discussed between the parties in a mediation room is confidential. Neither of the parties can summon the mediator to any courts to come and give a report as to what happened when the mediation has failed or if at any point of time to disclose what was discussed. And even if someone files an affidavit against other party in a court, the court will reject it, will not even look into it. It'll be eschewed. The mediation process is non-adversarial. For those who do not know the meaning of adversarial, let me explain. Adversarial is a process where, like in a litigation or in an arbitration, one party accuses the other party of having done something wrong and trying to go and establish on the same line. It's a blame game by each of the parties. A mediator does not encourage an adversarial conduct by the parties as such. Then, how does he do? He says, listen, you have an opportunity to fight everything, make all these accusations when you go to a court or an arbitration. Here you are come to resolve the dispute amicably. Let us understand each other's what your concerns, where you come from, what are your expectations, in what way you feel offended, why do you not, if the proposal given by the other party, why is it not appealing to you, it can be improved. This sort of dialogue is what we do, and it's done in a very, very professional manner. Very carefully it is done. As I said, it's a non-evaluative process. The mediator does not evaluate who is right, who is wrong, and cannot even say that you may lose this case, or you got a bad case, good case. All this, a mediator is totally barred from expressing any such opinion. No, the uniqueness of mediation is a party-centric process. When I say party-centric, let us compare a situation with a litigation where the parties play a very little role. The bulk of the work is done by the lawyers as such, most of the cases. Of course, there are cases where parties appear in person. But right from drafting the pleadings, filing into the court, arguing the matter, conducting the evidence, cross-examining a witness, everything is done by the lawyer as such. The party's role is only to advise and instruct his lawyers, his or her lawyer, as to how the lawyer should conduct himself, and based on the instructions. So the dialogue between the judge and the party is minimal. On the contrary, in a mediation process, the party to the dispute or a conflict is a center of importance. It is not as that the lawyers are not important. The lawyers have a role to play, very important role to play, but they say only on their talk is going to be with respect to the legal issues, but the dialogue that is going to be exchanged between the mediator and the party is basically between the mediator and the party, or between the parties, the parties who are at conflict. So that's why reason we say party-centric. The uniqueness of mediation is that if I am a party in having a dispute, I can bring in into the mediation group any of my friend or relative, or to support me or talk on behalf of me. I may not be that a great person who can communicate better, and someone can say on my behalf very easily. So we don't prevent people from coming. This is in addition to the legal advisors or lawyers who come there. And the uniqueness of mediation is that the outcome is determined by the parties. The mediator does not determine the outcome. The mediator does not give suggestion as to how it should be resolved. And it is purely up to the parties to agree upon a mutually agreeable resolution. And another uniqueness of mediation is that, unlike a court litigation where only the list that is brought to the court, or in an arbitration, the dispute that is brought before the arbitration tribunal, which gets resolved, in mediation, you can bring in, apart from the dispute that is or a conflict that has been brought to the table, you can add on any other dispute that prevails between the parties, which are either whether before any other court or not even before the court, but may subsist between the parties. They can also be brought in, which we call as a global settlement option. So we do not use the word compromise. Compromise is, many parties do not like the word compromise. To compromise is something which parties consider as demeaning. We always use the word resolution of a dispute. We also avoid using the word settlement, though settlement is very popularly used all over the world. Parties should feel very, very comfortable if you use the word resolution. So when parties agree as to how they want to resolve and determine all the details, then the mediator helps the parties how to come out with a draft settlement agreement, which you call as a resolution agreement. And the lawyers will play a very, very critical, lawyers of the respective parties play a critical role in drafting it. You know, there are lawyers specializing in mediation advocacy around the world. They don't go to the courts. You need a special skill as to how you advise a party in a mediation, how to help people to draft the mediation resolution. So basically, this is where we talk about law. The contract, the settlement agreement is nothing but a contract. So it should be signed by parties who are competent to contract. The competency of contract may vary from country to country. In India, who are parties competent to contract, one should not be a minor. One should not be declared as insolvent. One should not be of unsound mind. These are the three basic features. And the consent that is given to us to be free. Now, a person who represents another person should be properly authorized, be a power of attorney or a representing company, a proper resolution, etc. Now, the beauty of a resolution agreement in mediation is that it becomes final and binding in a private mediation. We fall upon, in India, we fall upon Section 73 of the Arbitration Conciliation Act, a settlement agreement that is brought out as conciliation is deemed to be a decree and binding and enforceable. Why I say conciliation? Because all mediations are conciliations, but not all conciliations are mediations. I'll talk about this when I draw a comparison between mediation and conciliation very soon. But if it's a court referred mediation, the settlement agreement goes back to the court, and the court asks for a confirmation from the parties whether they have signed it consciously with free consent, and then a decree is drawn up. So unlike an arbitration award, a settlement agreement, be it in a conciliation or arbitration or by mediation, either through court or private mediation, is final and binding, cannot be challenged by the parties unless a ground of fraud is alleged against the party and the mediator. Such a possibility is extremely remote because the process is voluntary. No one forces a party to sign a settlement agreement. They always can walk out. And the objects, as I said, should be lawful as such. Now, as far as there are a lot of mediation that happens between, especially commercial mediation between one commercial entity in one country and another country, and those are enforceable according to the Singapore Convention, which was signed last August, and India is there to ratify it. But maybe in coming few months, it's going to be effective in India too. I think I'll skip this slide because it is. Now, history of mediation. No, the present practice of mediation, we call it as a structured mediation because there is a definite process. Surprisingly, this process was found to be used to a large extent by the Phoenicians and the Greeks around 500 BCs, modified by ancient Romans. Then thereafter, this practice of structured mediation got lost, and then a lot of importance was given to arbitration as such. Now, coming back to the initial video that I played with respect to Godfather, the situation in America was pretty bad. Not in the 70s, but much earlier in the early 90s, when Roscoe Pound addressed the American Bar Association and said, listen, the system, people are losing faith in the judicial system and lawyers, and unless you adopt an alternative dispute resolution mechanism, effective alternative dispute mechanism, then people are going to totally move away from lawyers and go to take other means. But wisdom did not dawn on people for almost 70 years. So it's only in 76, the US Civil Code got amended. Federal Code got amended, and Rule 16 was introduced, recognizing mediation as an ADR option. And in 2007, the International Mediation Institute was promoted as a private entity by few organizations. There are several now such organizations around the world nowadays. And in India, the CPC got amended and Section 89 was introduced, recognizing mediation. April 2005, Madras Mediation Center was started. Around August in Delhi, in Bangalore, in January, this Bangalore Mediation Center was started. It's the largest and one of the best court annex mediation centers in the country, or perhaps in the world. In September 2013, Bangalore International Mediation Arbitration Conciliation Center was started. And I'm proud to say that I'm one of the promoter of it and continue to be an honorary director. And it is India's first and largest not-for-profit institutional ADR center. Now coming to arbitration, why does mediation still becomes a preferred choice compared to arbitration? Arbitration is an adjudicatory process. It's compulsory, as I already discussed that. A third party, the arbitrator or number of arbitrators, determine the outcome. Whereas in mediation, it's the parties who determine the outcome. And there are procedural laws for this. There are rules. It's governed by the Arbitration Conciliation Act. But then you have international conventions govern cross-border arbitration enforcement of awards. It is an adversarial process. Okay. I always compare if someone asks what is the difference between litigation and arbitration, the only difference that I could say is arbitration is a private litigation. The difference is that in litigation you can compare it to going to a restaurant and having food with several other people, walking to the restaurant and sharing the table, sharing the space and sitting at different tables. That's how litigation is. But when you if you're living in a room, staying in a hotel, you can order food in your room and as a room service and enjoy the meal privately in your room with you and your friends. This is the difference basically between arbitration and mediation. The entire thing is private and confidential, but at the same time very expensive. A room service always comes with an added price, right? And though the award is final, say it's binding, but again, there are provisions to challenge the various, almost all the awards are getting challenged these days on one ground or another. Lok Adalat is a hybrid system, which is very, very unique to India, and created a Legal Services Authority Act. There is a permanent Lok Adalat and a regular Lok Adalat. Permanent Lok Adalat, where public utility services like telephone bills, water bills, electricity bills, and bank recovery of small amounts, credit card amounts, these disputes are referred there. And if parties are asked to come and try to resolve and negotiate and settle, if they don't settle, an award is passed. It's an adjudicatory, quasi-adjudicatory process. And the other Lok Adalat, again, is voluntary, and there's a lot of persuasion that happens to asking the parties to resolve the dispute. But this is a voluntary process where people walk away from it if they don't want to accept it as such. Now, coming to conciliation, there's a different slide. I'll rather discuss that between what's the difference between conciliation and mediation. Now, judicial settlement is something that happens very often, but there's a difference between judicial settlement that happens in a Western country and what happens in India. In a Western country, if the matter goes to a court, the judge calls the parties and try to function more as a mediator. But once he functions as a mediator, and tries to bring a settlement and the resolution fails, he's barred to continue as a judge for the court. For the same dispute, it has to go to a different judge. So that is the reason it's not practiced very widely in India as such, but still judges make their efforts to bring a resolution between the parties as such. Now, what is mediation here? As I said, the mediation addresses not just the dispute but the conflict, and all this is done by a person who is independent, neutral. Now, what do we do? As a mediator, we listen to the problems of the parties, we address the cause of the conflict, we assist the parties in a very, very systematic and scientific manner as to how they can come out with a mutually acceptable resolution of the dispute. Now, why do we have to have mediation? Please go back, recall the slide that I said in the beginning. 29% of the disputants come to the court. 9% of them go to mafia. It can be even more. Now, mediation can give is a very cost-effective solution to resolve dispute. And people should have faith in a system that is fair and easily approachable. Now, assuming someone goes to a mafia and something is recovered, it can also spiral into a different dispute. It can take a criminal clothing. It can have very far-reaching impact in the society. And it's not very good at all. So people need to retain faith in the judicial system of a country as such. And that is the reason the judiciary has been supporting mediation. Our Chief Justice of India says that mediation now needs to be made compulsory for all before anyone goes to the court. So in a way, in a country like India, when 91% of the population is excluded from the justice dispensation system, I think making mediation as a compulsory process and the involvement of mediation, making it voluntary, should be a most welcome way as such. So briefly, we have a few minutes more. So arbitration mediation, as I said, is an adjudicated process. It's a negotiation process arbitration is governed by the Arbitration Conciliation Act. We do not have any specific law for mediation, but the High Court rules are there. And center like BIMAC, we have our own rules as such. It's all from international standing. One is adversarial, mediation is not adversarial. And I discuss all this. Advocates play a very critical role. It's party strength centric process. Okay. And now conciliation mediation. Now conciliation is what? The difference between conciliation is that a conciliation happens normally by two parties or two or more parties entering into an agreement to refer the matter for conciliation, similar to arbitration. But again, in conciliation, the parties are not agreeable to arrive at a settlement. You can't force them as such. And conciliation need not address the conflict. They can address only. It can normally it addresses the dispute as such. So it's restricted to the relief that is claimed. Now, a conciliator need not be a trained person. A mediator has to be mandatorily trained. The High Court prescribes 40 hours of training. BIMAC says 45 hours of training. And due to COVID, it's strange that people are offering 40 hours of training online, which somehow BIMAC does not subscribe it because it cannot draw the attention of the participants, and it's not an effective training program. Okay. But on all other manner, the entire process of conciliation is very confidential, and it's very similar to mediation as such. But the only difference is that A conciliator can give a proposal to the parties how to resolve. In mediation, we do not. So that is the reason we say all conciliations cannot be termed as mediation, but all mediations are conciliation. So for enforcement of a mediation settlement, we refer to the Arbitration Conciliation Act. I already discussed about Lok Adalat as such. And we have this panchayat system. Panchayat is an adversarial process, unlike mediation as such. And what are the qualities of a mediator? We have to be an embodiment of patience. We should listen actively. For hours together, we are trained to listen to people. I'm sorry that I'm talking to you for more than 1.5 hours, and you have a tremendous amount of patience listening to me. But as a mediator, we are supposed to listen to them, to the parties, without interrupting, very patiently. As we are neutral and detached, we need to develop good communication skills. We encourage productive communication between the parties, and we manage interaction between the parties, and we manage the temperament at the parties, because at many a times parties get angry and annoyed, just like Rajeshri Madam tried to bring in, check the emotions of Dr. Anita. And added advantage is a mediator is a good lawyer or can be even a domain expert. BIMAC encourages non-lawyers to become mediators. There are several people, doctors, engineers, management experts who have been trained as mediators. And bulk of the mediators abroad are non-lawyers as such. So we just assess whatever is there, but we refrain from passing any opinion as, and we maintain strict confidentiality. And we try to help the people to check, ask themselves a question as to what will happen if they go into litigation as such. Okay. Now, 75% of the disputes in the US are sent for private, people opt for private mediation even before going to the court, because court litigation is very expensive. The balance 25% of the disputants who go to the court, 94% of them are referred for mediation. And out of the 94% which goes for mediation, 95% is the success rate. So that is the reason mediation is gained as one of the most popular and favorite dispute resolution options in most of the Western countries. There are resistance, of course. And in the Bangalore Mediation Center and Delhi Mediation Center, which are court annexed mediation center, the success rate is about 65%. And the average time that is taken for settlement is 112 minutes, and within less than 2 sessions. And in a center like BIMAC, you won't believe the settlement rate is as close as 99% as such. So there are various types of mediations. Court annexed mediation, which is referred by the court. There are private mediations, which have been done by individuals as well as institutions like BIMAC. And when there's a community problem, maybe a refugee or a local community, or right now the farmers' dispute or any particular dispute, if it's resolved through, it's called a resolve, or mediation is used to resolve the dispute. Commercial mediation is with respect to all commercial aspects like contracts and intellectual properties. This requires a little bit of speciality when one gets trained. Restorative is often used in criminal justice system where, okay, if a damage is caused to someone, the mediation helps, ensures that the accused ensures that plays a very critical role in compensating the person, the victim as such. Then mediation happens, what we call a peer mediation. Another term we use is called mentoring in institutions like education institutes, workplaces, etc. Then family disputes are resolved through family mediation. And pre-litigation mediation has come to, I think, as far as commercial mediation, the law is already in place, making it compulsory. We can expect a new law that will make mediation mandatory as such. So the success rate in private mediation, as I said, 85%, 95%. It's cost effective and it's governed by the Arbitration Conciliation Act. There's no appeals. It's final and binding, and can be enforced as a decree. Friends, I'd like to conclude with a few quotations from our father of the nation. It is the duty of the lawyers to make efforts to settle disputes, that by doing so, the lawyers would not be a loser. I have been known as a litigator. And let me tell you, in the past 15 years, I've gained a lot more as a mediator. After becoming a mediator, as a lawyer, I've gained more and more clients. And mediation is not at all a threat to lawyers, because we gradually, even 1% of the shift of the 91% were excluded, even 1% come to the lawyer, it's a gain to the legal community as such. His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama said that, I quote, "One aspect of compassion is to respect others' rights and to respect others' views." You need not accept someone else's view but at least acknowledge that there can be a different view. And that is the basis of reconciliation. And finally, let us not negotiate with fear, but let us not fear to negotiate, said Abraham Lincoln. So it's a win-win situation when it comes to mediation. And if a settlement is drawn between the parties, as I said, they are not compromising, but all of them are winners. Before I conclude, this program has been brought to you with MS Ramaya Center for this class, as you call, in BIMAC. Very briefly about BIMAC, it's, as I said, is India's first and the largest in comprehensive international area center. It's first in the country to come out with an online ADRs center. It's a not-for-profit body. It's top 25% in the centers in the world. It's recognized by Government of India and courts. Its rules, both international and domestic arbitration and mediation rules, are compatible, are UNCITRAL compliance, and is the top 25 area centers in the world, collaborates with various international bodies, and provides arbitration, mediation, conciliation, mutual evaluation. So with that, and BIMAC extends its arm to various education institutions to support the cause of legal awareness, ADR awareness, and supports their all the various programs. So I request all the viewers to visit BIMAC's Facebook page, Instagram, and YouTube, and go through those pages, and we'll be immensely pleased if you can share and also like your views there. Thank you very much, and I invite any questions from very, very patient audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Students, request you to kindly pose any questions, any queries that you have. It looks like they don't have any questions at the moment.
They must be very tired by now.
Yes, sir, but thank you so much, in fact, for summarizing what actually is meant by mediation in these last 2 hours. In fact, you were able to talk to our students in very simple terms, and at the same time making it more engaging and more interactive as well. I think you were also able to effectively bring out the differences between what is meant by arbitration, mediation, conciliation, the different, and Lok Adalats as well. We look forward to many more such programs in the future. I think our director, Rose ma'am, would want to add on to this. Rose ma'am?
No, not really. Just to thank you profusely, sir. You see, there were no questions because of the clarity with which you made your presentation.
Thank you very much.
Absolute clarity, absolute clarity. I think I shouldn't take more time. I'm very thankful to you, but I would like to tell all our students and faculty that we are in the process of entering into an MOU with BIMAC. I've had a word already with our senior advocate, and he will be sharing the draft MOU soon, and we'll be signing an MOU. He's agreed to speak on arbitration, the various amendments which have been brought into the Arbitration Act. He's agreed to go in for a 7-day or 2 weeks program, maybe a training, mediation training. So a whole range of activities are there before us. Let me thank you profusely, sir. My colleagues, Rajeshri and Anita and Nicola have been coordinating this program. I'm thankful to students from non-law disciplines, the medical college students, dental students, management and engineering students. I hope you learned something, because this was an awareness program about what mediation is all about. Because normally non-law students would only be familiar with the regular courts and would think it's a big cumbersome procedure. And so I'm sure they would now know that there's something called alternative disputes resolutions, mechanisms, and mediation is one of the effective ones. And we have BIMAC right there in Bangalore. So on to Anita, Dr. Anita, who would just formally express a word of thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Rose, for your kind words.
Thank you, ma'am. Before I go to the vote of thanks, I would like to just sum up as to what exactly was being dealt to the entire 2 weeks very quickly, not in detail. But firstly, I would like to thank our distinguished speaker, Thiruvengadam sir, where he has very crisply, very in short, very in precise, he has mainly taken us through the entire historical background to tell us that this is not a new concept, but this concept of mediation was there since time immemorial. And also with regard to how exactly the evolution has been in India with regard to panchayats, lok adalats, he has given a distinguished features as to what are the different types of dispute resolution. At the same time, I would like to thank sir, mainly for the the exercising of all the simulation exercises which you have done for us. And I think I'm sure Suresh also has enjoyed a lot in the simulation exercise and the role plays which we had. We tried a lot to make it difficult for the mediator, but ultimately I did not want it to just push it for more time. As well as sir has also given us a lot of distinguished as to how do you mainly distinguish between a conflict and a resolution. And also sir has mainly also reflected to what are the essential features of mediations, what are the do's and don'ts, how a mediator has to mainly take the entire process, where he cannot be judgmental, he cannot be acting as a judge, but he has to mainly mutually facilitate between the parties. And as sir rightly said, it is all about emotions, how exactly the mediator brings back that emotions and how exactly the positions have to be changed. That is very well explained through the simulation exercise. And I no doubt I am a accredited mediator myself from I think I have met sir also many times in NLSIU, where I have worked with Professor Patil, and sir also knows about it. But I really appreciate Mr. Suresh for engaging the simulation exercise, which we tried a lot to mainly drag it on. Coming to my vote of thanks, I would mainly immensely thank Mr. Thiruvengadam BC for mainly being such a distinguished speaker and bringing us so easily, because as you know, our students are not only the law students, but other disciplines from the Gokula Foundations. So thank you, sir, for making the process very easy for us. And also throughout the session, I think through the simulation exercise, especially, it made very easy for the students to understand the entire concept of mediation. I would also like to thank our beloved director, Professor Dr. Rose Varghese, as well as our principal, Professor Dr. V. Shyam Kishore, who had joined earlier with us, but he has just left right now. I would like to thank for the entire support and for motivation for conducting such awareness programs. I would also like to thank the staff at BIMAC for hosting us virtually on this platform. Thank you so much, all the staffs behind BIMAC for hosting us. I would like to thank the coordinator of the center, Ms. Rajeshri K, for her endless efforts to coordinate the entire process and taking this initiative to bring out this awareness program. Last but not the least, I would also like to thank all the faculties and students who are coming from the other disciplines of Gokula Foundation for joining with us in the evening and also to make this event a grand success. Thank you one and all. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.